When the RCMP took action to dismantle protest in the Wet'suwet'en territory over a proposed pipeline, Canada's native people stood up. And not only Canada's native people, but Canadians in general as well. Many of them were very upset at this attack on our sovereignty. We spoke to Grand Chief Joseph Tokwiro Norton about the actions being taken in Kahnawà and in general.
Well, I think the main message was to make it clear where we stand in terms of the support of our brothers and sisters across the country, mainly Wet'suwet'en territory. And the use of force is not the way that things should be. That's not the way things should happen. In other words, there's discussion, there's dialogue, there's pre-work that needs to happen in terms of consultation, all those great things that Canada has talked about. For the rest of the country then to raise its head and begin to support our brothers and sisters out there is inevitable, because that's the way we are. Here in Kahnawà, we have a circumstance where people have taken the responsibility to show solidarity with our brothers and sisters, which we support. On the other hand, we also need to be very careful when we do things like that it's in conformity with what the community wants to support and wants to be a part of. So you have to be responsible when you take those kinds of steps. The Premier never called me. That didn't happen. And even if he did call, what are we going to discuss? Removal of people from the tracks and that sort of thing. Any kind of veiled threat about use of force and that sort of thing. That's the only thing I would expect from the provincial government at this point in time. We support protesting and standing up for our brothers and sisters across the country, just like they did for us in 1990. So it's time to be able to repay that, if you will, that we should do something of that nature. But there's limits, as to where this goes. And there's concerns about the reaction around us. Even though we haven't always had the greatest relationship with people around us, at the same time, there's been an attempt to rebuild, there has to be coming to grips that this is a national issue, and that nationally across the country, there are Indigenous people who are protesting, It's not just railway, it's also in major cities, downtown core. It's ports and harbors, and those are all federal installations, or federal government has oversight. This is having a trickle-down effect on the economy of Canada. So if it's having that kind of adverse effect on the country, what's the reaction? And what's going to happen to the future? What are we going to learn from this to make it preventable? So on the federal side, provincial side, they have to be aware that they just can't bully us anymore. And for me, what's happened in the last week or so is shock value. People wake up, people I mean right across the country, who are affected by this, and I've seen what our people can do when they decide to work, in conjunction with each other. Simultaneously, it just happened, boom. And it doesn't bring the country to its knees, but it certainly puts a dent in their economy, in their freedom to move through our territories, and that's the main thing, There is a need really to look at future plans and development. And what I'm thinking about actually is calling for a very special meeting to discuss these kinds of things, to sit down with people in a very calm way and say, what do we want to do in the future? If there's a need to have some sort of protest about what's happening in other parts of the country, do we really want to do things like that? Do we want to block highways, bridges, roads, and all that kind of stuff? And is this the right fight at this point in time? Or is there another major time in history, in our future, that we need to take this kind of action?